The way homeward,
all the way homeward,
my praises shall flow.
my praises shall flow.
I have been
redeemed.
I'm reading my love divine.
My love divine.
Glory, glory,
Christ is mine.
Christ is mine.
Christ is mine.
All to Him, I now resign.
I now resign.
I have
been redeemed.
Precious indeed is my Savior to me.
Is my Savior to me.
I'm redeemed.
I'm redeemed.
I'm redeemed.
I'm redeemed.
Happy in glory.
Happy in glory.
Someday I shall be.
Someday I shall be.
I have been
redeemed.
I'm reading
my
love divine.
My love divine.
Glory, glory,
Christ is mine.
Christ is mine.
Christ is mine.
All to Him, I now resign. I have been
redeemed.
Kate, Wednesday night, and we certainly are excited for her voice and her family. And we love this young. Give her this. So you got to come up here, kitty cat. You're not real shy, so I don't. There you go, sweetheart. You read that every day, okay? Love you. All right, I didn't. I'm sure Terry had some announcements, and I didn't even stop by and pick them up. But we'll do that now, and then add to them at the end if we need to. I don't know of anything. My wife is back. You may not recognize her. A long time. I've decided July the 1st is going to be the beginning of 2021. We're just going to start a new year and see if it gets off to a better start than what 2020 has been. Any announcements that you know of? Anybody that we need to mention? Yes, ma'am. That's exactly right. Little third grade teacher. Yes. Miss Shelby's going to be teaching. We're excited for her and she'll do a good job. Anything else? Well, that's exciting for her and we're happy for her. Well, like I say, we'll wrap it up at the end with some announcements. But Habakkuk, if you can find it, it's not probably one of those books that we've spent a lot of time in, but it's a beautiful little book. You probably already know all about it, but we're going to work our way through it, and I'll watch the clock and not go too long. May go too short, and every time I say that, I go too long. Yeah, so I shouldn't have said that. Oh, Brian's mother. Any update? There you are. I thought I saw you, and then yeah. And prayers as well as her husband. Like Brian says, it's been 49 years, and he's certainly got all the issues, and I'm sure this is very stressful and distressing to him. All right, the book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk, this wonderful short book is a song. I don't, and I just not going to go into that in detail, but I just would love to hear somebody sing all the way through it. I really would, just like the longest song in 119, right? I'm for a reason 118, but it's a short one. How in the world? How do you sing that many verses? I'd love to hear somebody do that. I'm sure if I go now, we don't have. That's how dependent I have got on that. But anyway, um, he's preaching somewhere in Jeremiah, and if you want, probably around 620 to BC. I think he's probably before 605, a little bit after that. So, and that may not mean much to you, but it's leading up to the Babylonian captivity. And Habakkuk is looking at the people. Now, a bit of background, and then we'll get in the text. Manasseh had reigned for 55 years, and he was a sorry, low-down individual. And God had him hauled off into captivity, and he got his heart right, and God forgave him. And he was released from Babylon. It was Babylon. They released him. He came back home and didn't live very long, but he tried to straighten things out, and it didn't work. Comes king when he died, and he's low down too, so he doesn't do anything. Manasseh's grandson Josiah comes to power at 8 years old, I think. 8 years old, and no doubt he had some good counselors and advisors, because 8-year-olds don't need to run a country, but the one country act like they're 8 years old. But anyway, he starts him on the path of reformation, and you remember that when they're remodeling the temple, they're going in there fixing it up because they've missed the temple for a pretty good while. The book of the law. how bad they got in 5 decades of massive rule. So when they read the scripture to do something, at least as much to change the way, how much it changed the hearts of the people, and that's different. And Josiah meddles in a battle that he really didn't need to meddle in, or at least that's my opinion, and he gets killed. Finished started, which is bad because he was on the right road. Well, then he has some sons that start take over. Anyway, they let everything revert back to the way. Is this not working? It sounds, huh? Well, it's me. A speaker won't fix that, or a microphone won't fix that. Anyway, they go back. Now we're talking about Judah, this little bitty country. They go back into idolatry. They're not doing right. And Habakkuk, there's still some good people there. There's still some good people. And Habakkuk is one of them. And of course, Jeremiah is as well. And Habakkuk just has his feel of the people of God doing the way they're doing. And so he cries out to God, how long, O Lord? How long shall I cry for help? That's verse 2. And you will not hear. God, are you not listening? And to be honest, sometimes we feel that way. That he's listening, but we want him to act quicker or different than what he's doing. Or cry to you violence and you will not save. He says, Lord, look at the mess we're in down here. People are mean. Why don't you do something? By the way, if I didn't intend on this being so timely, but when you think about our current situation in this country, this thing really fits what's going on. But anyway, and why do you make me see iniquity? Why do you idly look at wrong? You're not doing anything, God. Look at how bad things are. Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed. That's an interesting phrase, but that's a good translation. And justice never goes forth. The law is ineffective. Our society, he's saying, this is Judah, supposed to be the people of God. The people are so wicked that it doesn't even seem like we have a law. It's not working at all because nobody's paying attention to it, or not many people are paying attention. Justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. And unfortunately, that's happened. Okay, God, why aren't you doing something? So God says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. It's in verse 5. Now, if you're lucky to have a Bible that's got the little headings, if you didn't have these, you really wouldn't pick up on when God starts speaking necessarily in some cases. I know I'm trying to think. I was going to say Job, which you studied last Wednesday night, but there's a couple of, the book of Hosea. You don't know when it's God speaking sometimes and when it's Hosea speaking. It's somewhat confusing. And it's also not chronological, so it makes it. This is a little more easy, and it's certainly helpful that we got these headings. So God says, look among the nations and see, wonder, and be astounded, for I'm doing a work in your days that you would not believe if I told you. For behold, I'm raising up the Chaldeans. That's another name. That's an ancient name for the Babylonians. That bitter and hasty nation who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They're dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. I won't stop there. So God says, okay, you're saying I'm not doing anything. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the Babylonian Empire to punish the wicked. Okay. Habakkuk says, straighten us up, Lord, but he never would have thought about bringing in a pagan nation to wipe the nation out as being the answer. But that's what God is going to do. I'll stop there. Well, we got Luke here. I was just thinking about we've got two more teenagers back here. I was thinking about y'all as going through this, trying to figure out how to keep you somewhat engaged. I love the imagery here. Their horses are swifter than leopards. That's not meant to be literal. That's just this prophetic speak where you really are painting a picture. More fierce than the evening wolves. And you ever watch that show Alone? You ever watch that? They stick you out. They stick, I don't know, 8 people starting out. They stick people out in different locations, and you see how long you can stay there by yourself. And the only person you see is every once in a while a doctor will come in and check on you and make sure you hadn't lost too much weight and all that stuff. But anyway, uh, the first guy to go out. Now, Jim, this is no reflection on you, but the first guy to go out, to tap out, was a policeman. And the reason he tapped out was the first night a bear came to his tent. I thought he was being a sissy myself. It was a black bear, it wasn't a grizzly. Now, I'd have tapped out when the grizzly showed up. Black bear don't bother me too much. But anyway, but if you're out there and the wolves get to howling, and I love older literature, and you read about, people camping out at night and the wolves, they're scary things. And so he's painting a picture of these powerful war horses. And war horses, I'm telling you, they were a weapon in and of themselves. You go charging in, and this horse has already been trained. It doesn't matter what they're going into, they keep going straight ahead. And the horses figure out pretty quick, the way that I keep going ahead is I run over and I stomp anything in my way. And so he's got this picture of the cavalry of the Babylonians with these fast horses, and they're scary as the wolves howling at night. And their horsemen press proudly on. It says their horsemen come from afar, and they're quick. Boy, it's not like marching infantry. These guys are on you before you know it. Now, I want you to look at the last part of verse 9. They gather captives like sand. Okay, now I want you to jump down. Let's see if I can see it. Verse 11. I want you to get the picture here. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on, guilty men whose might is their God. Now, I'm going to come back to that phrase. But have you ever seen it, like when we were really in Iraq in a major way during the Iraq War? And have you ever seen those images of a dust storm blowing in? I'd move. I mean, I'm sorry. I'd move if I saw something like that coming. I wouldn't stay in that country. But it's basically a huge wall of sand, and it's rolling. And the more it rolls and the closer you get, the more sand it sucks up. And that's the picture he's giving them of the Babylonians coming down. The sand that's being caught up are the captives. And the further they go, the more captives they get, and it's just going to overwhelm you. You can't do anything but lay down and hold on. That's all you can do, and hope you don't die. So this is a graphic picture. Habakkuk says, God, straighten us out. And God says, here's how I'm going to do it. Okay. The kings, it talks about how the Babylonians they're just brave warriors. They're not afraid of anybody. They laugh at every fortress. I mean, here you come up on a walled city, and you've put in years and years of work of building a wall, and you've got soldiers up on the wall to protect your city, and they march up and they're like, good grief, we'll take this in 30 minutes. I mean, nothing, they're not afraid of anything or anybody. Now, they got a major problem. Their God is their own strength. Now, last week we looked at Daniel, right? And our week before last. And I'll come back to that eventually. But I didn't feel like it'd be good for everybody. But anyway, the last half of the book. But you remember old Nebuchadnezzar? He had a dream, and Daniel interpreted it, and his dream was that you get too full of yourself and you're going to go crazy and you're going to eat grass like a cow. And old Nebuchadnezzar, a year later, after he had that dream and had the interpretation, he's walking around, And he says, man, look what I have done. As in to him for a little while. Okay, that's the arrogance here. One of the gods of the Babylonians is the Babylonians. They're so proud of who they are and their might. And that obviously is going to send up some kind of warning to people who've studied the Old Testament. We know that that's not a good sign for them already. But so anyway, Habakkuk says, are you not from everlasting? I'm in verse 12 now. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment. He's holding out hope here. There's going to be a lot of people that die. Now, if you know anything about Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, a lot of them didn't have to die. In fact, hardly any of them had to die. Because God gave them the option through Jeremiah, just surrender. Okay, take your medicine. When the Babylonians come, don't fight. Surrender. But they accused Jeremiah of being a traitor for telling them that. And they fought, and it didn't go well for them. Anyway, O Lord, you've ordained them as judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof. Okay, that's good. He says, God, this is your business. Verse 13, you are of pure eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? This is kind of like Job. He's arguing a little bit with God here. You know, okay, God, you're the rock. You're the great one. But how in the world, or somebody that can't look upon evil, how are you going to use these guys? Because they're worse than we are. You see what he's saying? See, he's questioning God here. He's probably the most honest. Well, that's not fair. He's a very honest person. He's kind of like Jonah when God says, "Do you do well to be angry?" And Jonah's basically, "Yeah." You know, might as well be honest. It's better to be honest and wrong is to lie and be wrong too. But he's okay, God. This is your plan. But how are you using people worse than us to punish us? And then he starts, verse 14, you make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings them all up with a hook. He drags them out. And now he's talking, when the he here, he's talking about the Babylonians. Verse 16, therefore he sacrifices to his net. Again, they're celebrating their own power, and make offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? God, do you turn these guys loose? Is there going to be no end to it? Now, here's the part that I think is so contemporary. Okay, these guys, everything's out of control. You're using these guys, and they're beating up everybody around. What's going to stop them? So Habakkuk says in chapter 2, verse 1, I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me. By the way, that's interesting military language there, but I'll not go into that. But anyway, look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaints. So I'm going to wait for God to answer, and then I'm going to tell him what I think about it. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. Now, that's a phrase. One time I wrestled with this thing probably 3 or 4 hours and probably came up with the wrong conclusion. Basically, some people believe that it is writing a message of hope. And when people read it, they're going to run tell their neighbor. I took it, like I say, that time I wrestled with it so long, I took it that he's writing it out so plain that a person running by can read it. I don't think that's right now, but that's what I came to a long time ago. But anyway, whatever. For still the vision awaits its appointed time and hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Now, I want you to take your Bible and I want you to circle that or highlight it or whatever. By the way, if any of y'all, I love a good product that you can use on the Bible. Y'all, the highlighters that are gel pens that don't bleed through. If y'all tried it, they're awesome. I'm sorry, I get excited about little things. I hate the highlighters that you mark a page and then the other side's just as yellow. But the gel markers don't do that. Anyway, I circle this and think about it. Is God in control? Sometimes it doesn't look like it. Sometimes it looks like that. But here's what you got to learn to do. Just wait. Just wait. Now, the way he handles it, like Habakkuk, it may not suit you. But things are going to be fixed. And it will surely come. It will not delay. Now, for us, it may seem like a delay, but God's working on his time frame, right? And his time frame is a lot better than ours. And I don't know that I have any answer at all, but I've one of the good things about this moving thing and us staying up at the new house without the internet and no TV, I hadn't been able to keep up with the news, and that's been a good thing. I don't know what all is in how this is going to play out, but I know one thing: God's going to set it right in the end. And it may not be the thing that we think that he ought to do, but I guarantee it's going to be the right thing. And I think we ought to live with that comfort. That we don't need to get all bent out of shape. This is from a Presbyterian scholar. I was reading a lesson that he presented one time, and it was a really profound lesson. Of course, they're very Calvinistic. But he was telling a story, and I think I relayed that story here one Sunday night, but he was telling a story about a young man that was walking through basically a riot zone. And another man was coming the other way, and neither one of them were in a safe position. They obviously stood out. And the second man stopped the first man. He said, "Young man, what do you believe?" The young man said, "I believe that God is sovereign." And he said, "I knew that you were a believer." Now, what he was getting at, and there's more to the story, but what he was getting at is they were living by the Presbyterian statement of faith that the chief end of man, or the chief purpose of man, is to glorify God. And you can't glorify God if you don't trust him. And so they're out there in this unsafe zone, and they're calm because God's in charge. Now, they're Calvinistic, so they take that further than what we would, but God's in charge. And we get all bent out of shape, but give God time. He's working. You know, the old saying, God moves in mysterious ways, but here's the truth: he's moving. And it's going to work out. Like I say, maybe not to suit us, but it's going to work out the best possible way. Well, now he's going to describe the Babylonians. Okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to see what you got to say. And God starts speaking and says it's going to happen. And from now on, whenever it talks about it, when it uses the word his soul, your, and him, all the way down through here, he's describing Babylon. Okay? So God is now describing the Babylonians. Verse 6. Shall not all these take up their taunt against him, that's Babylon, with scoffing and riddles for him, and say, woe to him who heaps up what is not his own, for how long, and loads himself with his pledges? Will not your, that's Babylon's, debtors suddenly rise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoiled for them, because you have plundered many nations. All the remnant of the people shall plunder you. What's going to happen to Babylon? God's going to destroy them as a nation. Yeah, he's using them as an instrument of punishment, but he's going to call them into judgment. And just think about this. I think this is written somewhere, maybe a little after 605 BC. How much longer is it the Babylonian is going to be an empire? 541, I think. So 605 to 541, 60 years, it's going to disappear. We talked about this in the book of Daniel, remember? Old Belshazzar's having his big drunk party, and he's toasted the god of wine and the god of gold and the god of silver, and the handwriting shows up on the wall and says, many, many tekel shekel upharsin. In other words, you've been weighed in the balance and you've been found wanting. Your kingdom's going to be divided and you're going to die. Okay, so here's this massive empire. Now, 60 years is a lifetime for us, right? We think, oh boy, that's a long ways off. Well, God's not working on our time schedule. He's working on his. And there's more people involved than just the people that's being punished in Judah. By the way, as Sean, I think, was talking to me the other day, sometime the other, about how does this work out in the long range go as far as Judah being destroyed and taken into captivity? How does that work out in God's scheme of redemption? The Jews get scattered everywhere, and so when Paul goes preaching, guess what? First place he goes, everywhere he goes, is a synagogue. How'd those synagogues get there? During what appeared to be a very bad time, it set other people up to be receptive to the gospel. That's pretty amazing. God knows what he's doing. Anyway, woe to him, verse 9, woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from the reach of harm. And mine has an exclamation point. Now, you need to understand that the Hebrew doesn't have exclamation points, okay? That's the translator's judgment here, that you're supposed to get this, that this is a sarcastic statement here. You set your house up like a nest up on high so you'll be safe from harm. It doesn't matter where you set your nest up. If you're in trouble with God, you're coming down. That's kind of like in the book of Obadiah, a book we probably hadn't looked at in 30 years. I say that. You may study it in your book, Gospel Act book. But Obadiah, Edom, he says you set yourself up like an eagle up on the cliffs of the rock. But God says, I'll bring you down. Okay. Sound more like I'm preaching than teaching. But I get excited about these books. I don't think we study the minor prophets. And when I say that, I'm talking about 37, 38 years of preaching and being in churches. I don't hear us talk much about the minor prophets. You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life. I'm going to jump over to verse 14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. I think that's talking about future events. I think this is all going to come about for the spread of the church. Would Habakkuk have understood that? No, I don't think he would have understood that at all. But now, verse 16, I got to get 15. Woe to him who makes his neighbors drink. You pour out your wrath and make them drunk in order to gaze at their nakedness. That's a strange thing, but basically says you're humiliating your enemy. That's what Babylonians were doing. You're humiliating your enemies. You're getting them drunk. You're displaying their nakedness, which was a form of punishment. Well, you'll have your fill of shame instead of glory. Drink yourself and show your uncircumcision. The cup in the Lord's right hand will come around you, and utter shame will come upon your glory. So God's going to give you a cup, Babylon. That's the cup of his wrath. By the way, if you jump over to the book of Revelation, you got the cup of God's wrath in it. Now, I say a little after 6:05, and here's the reason. The violence done to Lebanon will overwhelm you. Babylon invaded Lebanon and 6:05. So I believe it's a little bit after that. As will the destruction of the beasts that terrify them, for the blood of men and violence to the earth, to the cities and all who dwell in them. You see, here's warfare. The Civil War it's so interesting to me, and I realize that it's not everybody, but the Civil War was an incredibly bloody war because, for one thing, they were using the tactics of 50 years before, but they were using the weaponry that was advanced. And so starting out, they're using tactics that just don't work against the modern weapons that they had. But they tried to make it a civilized war. The problem is the South didn't give up. And so you end up making it an uncivil war, like when Sherman marched to the sea from Atlanta, or down through Atlanta and then to the sea. He made war on the civilians. And that was, people just didn't do that. You tended to try to make the warfare in a civil war. You tended to army against army, and the innocent bystanders, you left them alone. That's the way they wanted to conduct it, but it wasn't working. But that hadn't always been the case. If you really want to defeat a country, you make war on the other army, but you make war on the citizenry. And you've read this in the Old Testament. They would take the time to fill good fields up with rocks. Okay, they'd defeat you, then they'd go out and fill your fields up with rocks. Then they'd go out, and if they had enough salt, they'd scatter salt on it, kill everything, and they'd burn you crops, and they'd kill your animals. They left you totally devastated, and that's what the Babylonians do here. Well, that's not just the defeat of an army. That's putting you in extreme poverty and helplessness for years to come. Okay, that's what they did, and God is going to judge them for it. Now, he let them do it. I think that's where free will comes in. He let them do it, but he's going to judge them because what they did was wrong. Now, do I understand all that? No. And then he goes back to verse 18 about the foolishness of idolatry. They make this statue and they say, "Wake up! Tell us something." And they trust in something they've made. Now that's absurd, isn't it? They trust in something they've made to save them. I love verse 20 in light of that. Verse 20, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Yeah, there's one God. And you better pay attention to him. Now, I'm not going to go, for the sake of time, I'm not going to work through all of chapter 3. I do think that beginning with verse 3, going down through there, he is referencing, and it's not easy to pick up on, but he's referencing the Exodus. Okay, the idea that God is angry at the sea and he tramples the sea. I think it's referencing the parting of the Red Sea. Verse 3, God came from Teman and the Holy One from Mount Paran. That's an area around Mount Sinai where God made the covenant with them. I think that's what it's referencing there. is that, okay, the God that delivered him in the past is still your God, and he's going to work things out. I think that's the message here. Verse 16 of chapter 3. I hear and my body trembles, my lips quiver at the sound, rottenness enters my bones, my legs tremble beneath me. So did he like God's answer? It made him sick. Because after all, Judah's going to be destroyed. Right? And it's fearful. I put it in context. We got all this chaos going on in our society. What if God acted and punished everybody that was guilty on both sides right now? It'd be a lot worse, wouldn't it? God, stop this stuff. And God says, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it my way. Well, it says that I'm sick over this. Yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. It's going to happen. I'm going to wait. And then verses 17 through 19, some of the prettiest verses, besides the just shall live by faith, probably the most quoted passages out of Habakkuk. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit don't be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, yet there be no herds in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on high places. And don't understand what you're doing, but I'm going to trust in you. I love that. All right. I guess we're going to play a song and offer, if you want to respond in any way, you certainly have that opportunity to do so. I guess while we stand and sing.
If the skies above you are gray, you are feeling so blue. If your cares and burdens seem great all the whole day through, there's a silver lining that shines in the heavens.